what we know from The Economist, Doug Laney has been on your podcast, James Price on mine. We talked about this idea of intangible assets and how much they drive the current economy. It's estimated that more than 90% of the value SP 500 is attributed to intangibles. Data and information is a big chunk of that. And what I'm thinking is, we know information is non-depletable. We can reuse it. It's not like a bottle of wine. We drink it and it's gone. We can keep using it. There's a non-compete aspect to the asset because multiple people can use it at the same time. But then one might argue, well, YouTube videos are the same. You can't kick it with your toe. They're intangibles. You can play it again and again, right? Multiple people can stream the same video at the same time, but I don't see that a magic asset. What's the difference between, what is the difference between information and a video on YouTube? Well, apart from the fact that a video on YouTube is a form of information, but the sort of information we mean when we talk about getting to business outcomes using data, using digital representation of the information, is slightly different. And the difference I believe is in the fact that information is contextual. You can't always reuse a data set. You kind of need to know the context around it. Up to what extent can we build data products that can be reused? And is that an important aspect to it? Should we worry about that?
Well, so this is getting a little abstract. So I guess when we talk about can they be reused, I would say, okay, well, look at any SaaS platform, market intelligence tool that has monthly subscription model. Can it be reused? Well, someone's paying every month for this thing, which implies they're getting value out of it. So I guess that means it can be reused, and they're probably running the certain use cases on a regular basis because it's part of, I have my 9 a.m. coffee. I look at this dashboard. I look for meaningful change. I look for insights that I didn't have yesterday. So is it reusable? The tasks and activities are definitely reusable. Has the data slightly changed? Obviously, yes. In a lot of these situations, we're probably talking about dynamic information, so the insights might be different. So when you say, can it be reused? It's like, well, has the data set changed or not? So I guess I'm not quite sure when you say, can it be reused, what you mean by that. Like, are you talking about a static set of data and can it have multiple uses or what? Yeah,
I suppose I'm talking about what comes upstream from relative to a dashboard, right? The data comes from somewhere. It's been transformed along the way and then feeds a dashboard. And to your point, like, it's not that data, that the dashboard needs a data set and that data set magically appears. It's data engineers teams that are responsible to provide that data set in a way that whoever is responsible for building the dashboard can work effectively and not reinvent the wheel or spin up Spark clusters or do a whole bunch of transformations. So, and this folks should communicate, obviously, the engineer and the analyst. And there's a movement going on, at least 4 or 5 years, called the analytics engineering philosophy that is trying to build a bridge between these two and say, kind of like DevOps did for software, the devs and those that operationalize, to use your term, software should talk to each other. Actually, not my term, not related. Well, what they should actually be, they should be almost the same person. If we remove any or reduce technical barriers in the process through the pipeline or through the data transformation journey, then we can have one person own the whole process from ingestion to cleaning up the data and serving it to a dashboard. And that process costs money and time, and it's often done just as you described at the beginning. We don't talk to the guys that are building dashboards. We just do our transformations and build something that might be reusable, maybe. Sometimes it isn't, or there are assumptions baked in those transformations that will impact how people then interpret and use the data set. Because you can add all your inks and all your fonts and all your, sparkly dynamic widgets, but if the data is not representing what you want to represent, then you got a problem, right?
So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying that what I would broadly call the plumbing for this. I'm not saying that the plumbing is not important. I'm saying that ultimately, I think teams are keeping track of technology efforts. Did we plumb this system into Snowflake yet? And the outcome, the race the game that everybody is playing is, have we migrated to Snowflake?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean anything to someone who's supposed to receive some value from the data that is in Snowflake. And that's a different game. And it doesn't mean that getting to Snowflake is a step in the right direction. And I'm not picking on Snowflake. Fill in the blank with whatever tool, platform, whatever you want to talk about. I think sometimes with these enterprise projects, part of the issue is we don't really know what we want, but it sure sounds good to be on that platform. And we can all imagine that these amazing things will open up to us if we were on this platform. And now we're there. We're at the top of the hill. We're on this platform. Now all this new value is supposed to occur, but yet it still requires additional engineering and plumbing and other work and design work to figure out what's needed. The designer's approach would be, let's start at the end of the process with the humans in the loop to understand what are the classes of problems we're trying to solve for. You might come up with a prototype or a vision prototype, and then get the technical people involved early in that design process so they can see where we're going with the designer.
Risk mitigation.
Exactly. Wouldn't it be easier to know how to store the data and whether to normalize it? Should it be streaming? Does it need to be sampled weekly or monthly? Well, we built 10 dashboards out. We built these applications. We've created a vision, an experience vision for the people this is for, the accounting team, the whatever team. We've prototyped a vision for what this looks like. I don't know any software architect, and having worked with many engineers over 25 years in this field and architects, that don't find it really helpful to see that a stab at the endpoint, the classes of problems, even one dashboard. It's like, wow, okay, I had no idea whether you're going to need to see this and reshuffle it weekly and like compare it to this other thing. Like, we don't get that data right. We have to buy it. We have to store it. It's not streaming. It's not real time. This chart will never work unless we build all this other plumbing out. And no one knew to say anything about that because no one had talked about that because we never had really engaged with the humans in the loop at the end of the process. We just took the platform's theoretical things that it could do and assumed that we would get this new value out of it. My point is understanding the endpoint first. That's really the beginning of the process, is working backwards from the end as much as we can. And it is about de-risking it, but it's that makes it sound almost like it's a doomed and we're taking some of the doom out. And it's more like, no, aspirationally, we're trying to make someone's life better, to create new value. And it might be wrong. And maybe we still won't get there, but we will de-risk it. But it's look, I understand some of this stuff feels like squishy and like people's feelings and all this kind of stuff. Do it because it makes your work better. What do I mean? Aren't you tired of doing work that doesn't get used? That you spent all this time on it, and then someone's like, "Oh, that's not what I meant. Could you do it this way?" And it's like, FUC. It's just like, yeah, and it's just like, I hate working here, whatever. Then do this design stuff because your work will begin to matter more. You'll build stuff that matters and has an impact. It's much more fun to code up and build things that get used than it is not. So, the way to do that is to figure out, what does the end user need and want? What would make their life better? That's the way to build stuff that makes your work count.
What do we need to do in the organization to help these people that embrace this mindset to actually succeed at their job?
That's a really general question. I would love to say, well, hire more designers and creatives, particularly in areas where we don't associate or think that they're necessary. But really what it's about, I think, is outcomes over outputs, which is not my thing. It's not my framing, but I love this framing. It's telling the team, success for us is delivering outcomes, not things. It's not the model. We don't get points for the model. The game we're playing is meeting outcomes. Therefore, outcomes need to be defined. By who? We're probably going to need to do it with them, because a lot of people don't know how to express that. They know how to say, we're migrating to Snowflake. How is it going? Even though in their head, they're like, so that I will have real-time whatever about my customer ad campaigns. But that part's not said. They're just asking you about Snowflake. Together, we focus on the outcome piece. And the product-oriented thinker is thinking holistically about this problem. Good product managers, like in software companies these days, it's about sending the team ownership of a problem, not a feature, not an integration, not a pipeline to own, but instead your job is to increase the speed by which all these things load by 20x. I don't care how you do it. I don't know what needs to change, but we know that a 20x speed improvement will yield this other business result that we care about. How do you do that? I don't know, but that's your problem. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but you're smart and you have a cross-disciplinary team. You own the problem. And that's what good product teams do, is they're not building widgets and features. They're owning a class of problems. And this has been actually studied now. There's real financial gain to this. I just had Francois Condolone from Boston Consulting Group on my show to talk about, they've been working with MIT Sloan to do studies of large AI use in the enterprise. And last year's study was trying to look at kind of the human AI interaction thing and what are the, quote, more successful companies doing and what were the traits of that. And the companies that were seeing outsized business value from AI were the ones that had figured out the human-machine interaction piece. And some of the quotes in there from some of the people that were part of the study, I think it was a mining company in South Africa or West Africa, I forget. But he said, we don't have like machine learning teams. We have problem owning teams. We send a team out to own a problem. And yeah, it's probably roughly in the scope of some kind of data related problem. But that framing of like, we sent them out to own this problem, to talk to customers, to understand, and when I say customers, that could be internal too. I don't remember that case, but the point was this leader, I think he was a CDO, had set it up as a problem owning team. That's a very good modern product kind of lens on the problem. And it might mean you need some other people besides someone who has the word data in their title. You might need some other kinds of people, some researchers in there, product people, this analytics translator thing, which is very much like what I would call a data product manager, these other kinds of roles that look at the world differently. And I think the people that know how to connect that last mile piece, and I don't think that's always people that are used to, quote, working on the plumbing in the back end. It's like the people that are choosing the faucets, like ultimately water comes out of this faucet, and yes, we need plumbing. But the basement, the plumbing down in the basement, nobody really cares about that. They expect it to work like oxygen. And they don't understand the ramifications of those choices. So we need to stop talking about those choices with the customers because they don't know, they probably don't know what they're talking about down there. And I've sat through so many of these decisions about abstract conversations about which architecture we're going to use and all this kind of stuff. And those are important things. But most of the time I realize the argument here is because we don't really know what someone's going to do with it. And I think if we had a better picture of what good looks like from the end user, the stakeholder here, we would have less arguments about which way to, we know what the problem space is better. And it's no longer like just opinions and all this kind of stuff, So I'm kind of rambly, but
one could imagine one way to solve this problem could be, there are at least two ways I can think of. One is by educating everyone on everything. So I've imagined a scenario, which obviously is impossible, where you had a magic wand and you could give all the knowledge, that combine knowledge to everyone, then everyone would know exactly what happens outside of their bubble. And we wouldn't have translational problems. We wouldn't have to worry about what do you care? What do I care? But that's the reality of things is our attention is very limited. It's very short and we can't know everything. So effectively it becomes a matter of filtering down the space of knowledge to the thing that you really need to worry about for your particular problem. How do I help you? And that's I think it's a principle that applies to internal customers as well as external customers. With the internal ones, it's a little bit more tricky because when you build a data set or a data mart or anything that is at the beginning of the pipeline, the idea is for many people to reuse that asset instead of creating copies over and over of the same thing, because copies become a nightmare when you want to govern your data, for compliance and all that. So I almost feel like the more we walk backwards on this line from the end user all the way to the data source, the more critical it becomes to be curious and talk to people and understand what they want to do with it and how is that going to impact that work.
Yeah.